anybody who listens to the news yesterday will have probably heard that there were some major announcements for self-employed people, and also today we've had confirmation on the furlough, I'm just going to get it wrong all the time, furlough and how that works, who's relevant, who's applicable, how it works for people, and all things like that really. So hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions. Please also remember that any questions you do have, then please do message them in, and hopefully we will be able to answer them as we go along as well. Sorry, we've got it on in synchronisation. I can now see the comments.
Excellent. So hello to everyone that's commented so far. Sally, Cherise, Suzanne, Donna, Dr. Crispin Chavez, Elaine's here. Excellent, brilliant guys, thank you, welcome.
So shall we get started? It's 2
o'clock.
Yep,
let's get started.
Right, so finally the revenue have given some amazing, well hopefully it's amazing, news for self-employed people. So we're going to touch on the self-employed first, and then we're going to look at the furloughs, how you can claim, who's involved, and all those sorts of people. So we'll start off with the self-employed. So the great thing is that they've actually announced something for self-employed people, which is great. What they've done is, the way it's worked is calculated on your 3 years tax returns up to April 2019. So that's your 17 tax return, your 18 tax return, and your 19 tax return. Now, to know, the biggest question that we've been having quite a few times on our emails, and I think generally, is, are director only companies classed as employees or self-employed? Now, that you are classed as employees, you're not classed as self-employed. So the way to know whether you are classed as a self-employed and whether this is relevant to you or not is actually on your tax returns. So it's, if your tax return is got that self-employment box ticked or the partnership box ticked, then you are considered as being self-employed. If not, then you are an employee, or you might have rental property. So what it's done is, for those with 3 years employment, self-employment, sorry, you would look at your tax return, you would get the 16, 17 and 18 profits. Now these are your net profits, so these are after your expenses have been taken into account and that stuff. So you would take the 3 years, you will add them all up, you would divide them by 3, so that would give you an average for 3 years, and then you would look at that figure. Now if that figure was £50,000 to the zero, so to say, or above, then unfortunately you are not entitled to claim for any self-employment. So it's called the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme, and unfortunately you would then not be able to claim for any income support under the self-employment scheme for that. So your income has to be £49,000 or less.
So this is where the scheme differs completely from the help for employees, because all employees can get help no matter what their salary, although it was capped. Whereas for self-employed, there is a cliff edge essentially, where if you earn 50,000 or more, you can't make any claim.
Exactly. So yeah, so it has to be £49,000 999 or less. That's the biggest disadvantage. If you are over the £50,000 mark on that average, then basically you do stop there. You are entitled to claim universal credit, but that's basically it, and that's where they throw you under the bridge, really.
Or under the bus. Yeah,
under the
exactly.
bus. So yes, if by any chance you have not been self-employed for 3 years, then you can take the last year. So you have to have been self-employed for 2019 though. So they will look at the 2019 tax return. For those people who have not yet filed their 2019 tax return, now actually it should have been filed by 31st of January 2020. However, the revenue has given you another 4 weeks. So you have got until Thursday, midnight on Thursday, the 23rd of April 2020, in order to file that tax return. If you do file that tax return by that date and your profits are below the 49,999 mark, then yes, you are entitled to claim for self-employment income support scheme. So that's a huge advantage there. Sorry if our screen goes a bit blurry. I don't know why it goes a bit blurry, but sometimes it does. Now, the monthly amount is, once you've worked out what your average is, the monthly amount then is then divided by 12 and you will get a monthly figure. Now, that is then capped at £2,500. So it doesn't matter how high you have. Obviously, if you've got 48,000, you divide that by 12, that is actually £4,000 a month, but you will only get a maximum of £2,500 a month. This is a grant, which means that it does not have to be repaid back. It basically, the revenue are giving it to you for free. It is taxable, so it will go on your tax return. It is treated as income, and therefore it is liable to tax in exactly the same way and normal way as your normal profits are.
And I assume class 4 national insurance as well, essentially.
They haven't confirmed that or not.
Okay.
They said it's taxable.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are those bits there. The difference between the furloughing and the self-employment scheme is that actually you are allowed to continue to work under the self-employment scheme, which you're not allowed to do for your employer who has furloughed you. So that is the difference between the two. So just checking out if we've got any questions.
We have.
Here.
So Ali Humphrey, she's asked, if you take out a loan from the bank, will they class this as wages and will you get taxed on this?
No, so naturally, Ali, a loan is a loan. So a loan is repayable by you to the bank. So therefore, it is not income. Unlike this, which is a grant, which is actually something that you would keep and spend as you wish, does not need to be paid back, is treated as income. Whereas if you take out a loan, that is not treated as income in your books. It is a loan. As you can appreciate, normally when the revenue introduce new schemes such as these, they take about 18 months to 2 years to actually get all the software in place and get it tested before it is actually put out there. Now, with their self-employment income support scheme and their furloughing schemes, these are actually having to be redesigned from scratch and implemented and put out within a couple of weeks. Now, when you consider this normally takes them 18 months to do, they are working 24 hours a day, and I probably would imagine 7 days a week in order to get these done. So this is why they do take a long time to come about. The income from the self-employment income support scheme is going to be paid directly to you. So the way they're going to actually do it is that they will assess those people they believe are eligible and those people that they believe are entitled to receive the income. They will contact you directly and basically say, we believe that you're entitled to receive the income, and we believe that you need to receive so much amount of money based on the way their calculations are done. Now, naturally, the most important thing is that you check their calculation, and what they say is you're going to get is correct with what you believe you are going to get. And then they ask you for your bank details in which they can pay the money directly into your bank account for you. Now, if you don't receive, they haven't said actually when they're going to actually be submitting these letters, but they do say that they expect the payments to be made at the beginning of June. So I would imagine that these letters are going to be coming out at the end of April, probably the beginning of May, in order for them to get the details, all the information, agreed figures, and the payments to go back to everything. So in that case, I would say that as an individual, you would receive the information, you would pass the bank details on to them, and they would pay you straight into your bank account. If you think that you are actually entitled to it, then you should actually contact them if they haven't contacted you by, say, the end of April. So please don't contact them now, because there's absolutely probably nothing they can do. They're just about getting their heads around it. And then once that's done, then you can probably start looking at contacting them.
So for self-employed people, they're not going to get any money till June at the earliest.
Correct.
And it is a process for them to put in place and get whatever portals or processes in place. So for businesses that are struggling at them right now and can't afford this month's rent or anything else, what do they do?
So earlier on, you probably would have heard last week that the Revenue introduced business interruption loans, which businesses would be able to go and get from their high street banks. Now, they have actually said that these business interruption loans are available to self-employed people. And as we said on our show yesterday, there are about 40 banks who have this available, and what you can do is contact them. They are 80% backed by the Revenue, and they are interest free for the next 12 months. So the principles that applied for the companies also apply for self-employed people.
And as we said on yesterday's show, just be careful when you do approach the banks if you are looking for loans. Some of them are asking for personal guarantees from the business owner, some are not. It's far more beneficial for you to go for the ones without personal guarantees. The government's backing 80% of it, so you don't want to be putting all your money in to pay the loan off first, and if you can't afford it, the government's only backing the remainder to the tune of 80%. So go for the banks which aren't asking for personal guarantees. If they ask for a personal guarantee, steer well clear.
And I think I read today that most banks are not asking for personal guarantees for any income, any loans below the £50,000. It was at 25, but now it's at 50.
The banks that were asking for personal guarantees are under a lot of pressure to remove it, so they may stop that.
Yeah, so they have considered.
Okay, so we had a question from Peter. It's quite an important point, so thank you, Peter. He says, does this mean that the self-employed person can continue to work and still receive the grant?
Yes, self-employed people are entitled to work and to receive the grant. Now, obviously, a self-employed person is only a self-employed person in the eyes of the Revenue if you have ticked the self-employment sections on your self-assessment tax returns, and that your self-employment income is 50% or more than the rest of the income on your tax return. So, for example, if you have a pension income of, say, £20,000 and self-employment income of, say, £10,000, therefore you would not be entitled to claim this, even though your self-employment income is below the limits, and you would then basically
so your self-employment income must be at least half of your income on your tax return.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is for self-employed people. We are not talking about owners of limited companies, directors of limited companies. So this is a question that's come up again.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of other questions there.
Yeah,
we need
we'll
to
come
go
on
back
to those
up,
questions.
really.
Yeah, it's okay.
Because
I'll
there's a
get
few
them.
there. Okay, so I'm just looking at my notes here. Somebody has asked, there are a few scam texts going around saying you're entitled to money from HMRC. Please do not click on these. These are 100% scams.
HMRC will really not be texting you.
No, HMRC have actually confirmed that you will not be receiving any information from them via a text, via email messages or anything like that. It will either be done via your government gateway or in writing. So it is definitely not going to be done in text. There are hundreds of scams going around, and there's loads saying that you're entitled to the money now and everything else. Please don't get them. This really is something that's very hugely in the scamming system going around
so
now.
Another question that came in, so if I declared £1,000 a month for the last 3 years, the government will pay me £800 a month.
That's correct.
Essentially, that's
yes,
correct.
That's correct. So but that's obviously got to be £1,000 of net profit,
Yep.
not £1,000 of turnover. So you are looking at your profit figure and not your turnover figure.
And that will apply also to those self-employed people who are under the CIS scheme. You're used to having your tax deducted at source, but it's looking at the actual income less your expenses, not the tax that's been deducted. So yes, you too will be able to get this, and the Revenue will write to you and tell you. You can carry on working, as Chantal said, and this is an income top up, if you like. So as this gets added to your income, you put it on your tax return. it is taxable. You will be taxed on this money that the government's giving you.
Yeah. Okay, so we've looked at the fact that it's an 80%, it's a grant, it's over 3 years. You will be paid in a one-off lump sum instalment, is what they have said. This money will not be paid to you until June, and therefore it will be a one-off lump sum. So if you are claiming the full 2,500, then you will get the maximum 7,500 as one lump sum figure. Okay. Naturally, if it needs to be extended, this will be extended and can be extended for however long the revenue thinks that it needs to be extended, basically. Just looking here.
So there's a question coming from, well, Mark's passed it on behalf of Karen. She's saying, with regards to self-employment payments, am I correct in saying that if you add up your last 3 years net profit figures and this total is over 50,000, you don't get anything? So no, it's an average, the yearly average, so it's over 50,000 a year, so that'll be 150,000 over 3 years. It's not 50 over 3 years. Yeah.
And then naturally, obviously, if you've only been self-employed for 2 years, it will be over 2 years. And if you've only been self-employed for 1 year, it will only be for 1 year. The revenue did confirm, however, that if you started self-employment this year and have not yet filed a tax return, that unfortunately they're unable to assist, and it will be universal credit.
Okay, and for Gary, yes, he started self-employment last July, so has not done his first tax return yet. Unfortunately, Gary, you are not covered. This scheme only covers people who were self-employed and filed a 2019 tax return, so that covered the 2018-2019 tax year.
And we have said that if you are not 2019, then please, if you haven't filed it yet, then please get it in and filed.
There's a question here about how will you tell between legitimate contact from HMRC or a scammer. I'm assuming because HMRC will write to you.
HMRC will write to you as well, yes, and they will be providing you with the information that shows that they know you.
Please ignore all the text messages.
And you can be pretty sure that you're not going to get anything from HMRC until at least probably May time anyway. So anything that you might get now, you can guarantee yourself that it is definitely scam. And this will be the same for employed, self-employed, and everybody who's on there as well.
We're getting a number of questions about directors, so we'll come on to you guys in a minute. We will be talking about furloughed workers.
So if you're new to the self-employment system, then unfortunately you have got the welfare system. You also have got the business interruption loan, in which you can be assisted with as well. The self-employment scheme is backdated to the 1st of March, so that is the March, April and May figures. So that is how they get their 3 months, which is then paid to you in June.
Now for those self-employed that are not covered, so those that started after the 6th of April last year, or those who earn 50,000 or more a year, what can they do?
So for those people, they have the universal, we've just said, universal credit and business interruption loan.
Okay, and that's it. That's all there is.
Unfortunately,
nothing
yes,
else.
that is it. So this also applies to self-employment. Is also if you are registered as a partnership as well. So if you are a partnership, then this also applies as well. You have got partnership. Is effectively you're self-employed, so that would be the same, partnerships and self-employed. So the revenue have actually listed a number of people who are eligible to claim, and you have to be able to tick all these boxes in order to claim. Now it does go on your tax return, and so therefore you will have to pay tax on this amount. The conditions are that you have submitted a 2019 tax return. And as I said, if you have not submitted a 2019 tax return, you have got until the 23rd of April 2020, so 2020, in order to file that tax return. So if you have not submitted a 2019 tax return, you've got until the 23rd of April 2020 in order to submit that tax return. You have actually had to have been trading as a self-employed or through a partnership in the 18 and 19 tax year. You are trading at the moment, and you are trading at the time you apply, but therefore your income might have been affected by COVID. So you have to have lost income, or your income has been reduced or sometime or another via COVID-19. You must be intending to trade in 2021. So if you filed a tax return in 2019 that actually said you ceased self-employment, you are not eligible to claim. So you have to actually be trading when you apply and intending to trade in 2020, 2021, which is where we intend to be in the future. So if you are thinking that your self-employment was going to stop in December 2019, say, and therefore you will not be trading in 2020, 2021, you are not eligible to claim. You have to be intending to claim in the year from April 2020. You have to have lost income, as I said, from COVID-19, and your profit has to be less than 50,000 a year, and more than half of the income declared on your tax return.
Okay, a question in from Jackie. Does this include rental income?
So rental income is not self-employment income. Rental income is a completely separate source of income. Unfortunately, if you are not receiving all your income due to tenants not paying, then this is a completely separate issue, and unfortunately the government can't help you in this situation. As you know, you are not able to evict anybody at this current moment in time. You can make applications for an eviction, and this can take place. However, as I would say to all landlords, please note that this is not a choice for a tenant if they can't afford to pay the rent.
Yeah.
They might have lost their job, so we just need to be, as a landlord, we just need to be compassionate and be caring to our tenants.
Yeah, I understand that landlords can serve notices, but there's actually no enforcement. They can't take it to court to get an eviction order, so you can't do anything. The only thing open to landlords, if they've got borrowings, they've got mortgages on the properties, they can probably get holidays from the mortgage companies.
Yeah.
Payment holidays.
So yeah, so that's that one. Now I think that covers all the self-employment section. Obviously, if you've got any questions that spring up while we're still here, then please do message them in. We'll happily answer them. I mean, I have covered hopefully quite a variety, but I've also covered things that we've had questions in from people as well. The biggest question we've had from people is those directors that are basically running basically a sole director limited company.
Not even sole director, because they might have employees, but if you're the owner director of a company.
Yeah, exactly. You might be in the position where you're taking low salary, high dividends. Unfortunately, the revenue consider you as being an employee, and you would be under the furloughed scheme. However, under the furloughed scheme, it is very, very difficult to prove that you have actually not worked. Now, under the furlough scheme, you're only allowed to pay furloughed income to somebody if they are not undertaking any work at all, if they are not generating any source of income, and they are not intending to generate any source of income. So as a director of a company, if you are checking out your website, updating your website, doing social media for your company, that's effectively generating a source of income, because obviously you're hoping it might lead to income at a later date. And that is effectively not possible. The only way you could possibly furlough yourself as a director of a limited company is effectively you close your doors. You do not answer any emails, you do not contact suppliers, you do not contact customers. And I can imagine this would be very, very hard to prove and very, very difficult to actually do as director. There is actually currently I suppose it's a petition is the correct word of saying it, at the moment for director companies who are on a director and salary situation. And there are petitions at the moment for us. I've signed one myself, and it's for those that effectively are in the same position, and we're asking the revenue, please can you consider us, because we're not a self-employed person. We can't be furloughed because we have our own business. We still need to keep our business because we've worked hard to start up our business, and we don't want to close the doors on it after all this is over. So please can you actually help us? Now that is on Facebook. It's probably doing its rounds. I don't know how far it's got, but there is best to, if you can, sign it. And hopefully the revenue and the government will actually look at it and put another announcement out, which I don't expect to be this week. Today's the last day. So next week I would hopefully expect something to actually help us, so those that are a director and shareholder companies.
So is it possible that if you've got multiple directors, maybe one director takes on all the duties and the others can be furloughed?
Yes, yes. So as long as the furloughed person does not undertake any duties and does not work for that company that has furloughed them, then yes, that's totally possible.
But it's on your salary, it's not on your dividends.
No, it's on your salary, and if you're on a 719 or a just over the £1,000 mark, then that's the figures that you're actually looking at. So we've had a couple of questions.
Yeah,
so
we had some more questions.
Before we go on
some
to
more
furloughs.
questions. This is more about businesses with premises. So people are asking about the £10,000 grant for businesses that have premises but don't pay rates because they're on the SBRR, the Small Business Rates Relief. So yes, you get the £10,000. Karen has asked if that is taxable. It's not, is it?
I don't believe it is. No, we've not been told that the grant from the local council, and it comes in from the local council. We've not actually been told that it's taxable, unlike the furloughing and the self-employment
that only applies to businesses that have premises and are under the rateable value. Craig also asked, he opened a small business at the start of March this year and became VAT registered. On April last year he opened a small shop, and at the start of the March this year became VAT registered. So he doesn't pay business rates, so he should get the £10,000 grant, hopefully, from the local council. Before that date, he also said he was self-employed, so there's potentially a chance that he can get some money there. The revenue will be looking at your previous tax returns, and if you've got self-employment income and it's more than 50% of your income, then they will be writing to you.
But with the self-employment thing, you have to be continuing to trade in 2020-21 as a self-employed person.
He is still self-employed. He's just changed his trade to a different business.
All right. Yes. No, that's fine
then.
Yes. No, that's fine. As long as you're still self-employed and not
I hope
trading as a
that
company.
answers your question, Craig.
Yeah. Okay. So if we go on to, hopefully that answers all the self-employment ones. If we go on to the furloughing, the revenue have now finally explained to us a bit more about the furloughing. So, as again, this is something they've had to completely design from scratch, and something that they've never ever designed before. So again, this is something that we're having to wait for. We are expecting the scheme to be up and running at the beginning of April. Now, April starts on Thursday. No, it starts on Wednesday next week. So April starts on Wednesday next week. That does not mean the scheme will be running next week. I doubt very much. So we're probably looking at least the week after. What the revenue have confirmed to us, however, is that the 80% of the wages that they are covering, up to a maximum of £2,500, is the gross element. So this is the gross figure. There will be tax deducted from this and employees' national insurance, as well as the employee auto-enrolment contribution, workplace pension. In addition to this £2,500, the revenue have confirmed that they will also repay back the employer's national insurance and the employer's pension, workplace pension contribution element. So effectively, in addition to the £2,500, that's an extra 16.8% that companies have to pay in the employer's NIC and the pension contributions. Now, obviously, it depends on how much you earn, because some of it might be rated and not rated. It depends on what bands you fall in, effectively. In order to be able to furlough a person, that in person has to actually be on the payroll on the 28th of February 2020, on the 28th of February 2020. So in order to be able to furlough somebody, they have to be on your payroll on the 28th of February 2020. If you have made an employee redundant since the 28th of February. If you made an employee redundant before the 28th of February, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do to help them. If, however, you've made an employee redundant since the 28th of February 2020, the Revenue have confirmed that you are entitled, assuming they don't have another job somewhere else, to rehire that employee and furlough them. So in other words, you're enabling them to have some money back in order for them to carry on being able to survive. The furloughing applies, and the £2,500 limit applies to everybody, and no matter how big your employer is or how many employees it has, it applies to everybody. It applies to limited companies, sole traders, partnerships, charities. So it applies to any business that has a PAY scheme already in place. You are not able to work at all for the company in which you have been furloughed. If you already have a job with another company, so if you already have 2 jobs, then you are entitled to be furloughed effectively from 2 jobs. So you could have your full salary undertaken. Now, if you have one job that has furloughed you and another job that has not furloughed you, you are not supposed to increase your hours with the job that has not furloughed you. So you should really be staying on the same salary. The government has agreed to pay up to 80% of the monthly pay, and that is calculated, and I'll explain that calculation in a moment as well. But that's based on the salary of the 28th of February 2020. And the government have agreed to pay 80% up to a maximum of £2,500. The extra 20%, or the top up, depending on whichever way you want to look at it, is not compulsory to be topped up by the employer. So basically your 100% pay is not guaranteed. 80% of your pay to a maximum of £2,500 gross per month is permissible. As an employer, it is your obligation to discuss with an employee if you are going to furlough them. You don't have to furlough all your staff. You can decide who you want to furlough and who you don't want to furlough. It's a bit like a redundancy situation. If somebody's role is no longer required anymore, you would just make that person redundant, and it's the same situation. You wouldn't make them redundant in this situation because it's not very fair for them, but you would make them furloughed. So you'd be able to furlough that person, and you would just don't have to do everybody. It is really important that you actually get a document and an agreement. It doesn't have to be a legal agreement, but basically a document signed by both the employer and the employee to say that they understand what is happening, that they understand as an employee that they're only going to receive up to 80% of their salary to no more of £2,500. Tax will be deducted from this, national insurance will be deducted from this, and they are not entitled to do any work for the company. And this is for... You should also, when you sign the agreement with the person, state from when the furlough period is going to start and state from when the furlough period is going to end. Now, at the moment, we know that the system is in place for 3 months, backdated to the 1st of March. So we're able to say that we can do it from the 1st of March to the 31st of May. After that, we can't actually guarantee on when and what we can do. So probably if you're going to get them agreement or sign a document to say how long it's for, I'd probably say do it for 3 months now, if you know you're going to do it for the whole 3 months. And that way, if you've got to do another one at a later date, you can do another one at a later date. There is a minimum period in which you can furlough somebody. So you cannot furlough somebody for a week. The minimum period is actually 3 weeks. So you cannot furlough somebody for less than a 3-week period, which by that understanding, we believe that that means that you will be applying to the Revenue for your payment back probably once a month or once every 3 weeks, because you won't be furloughing somebody for less than 3 weeks at a time. You can only make one claim in a 3-week period, and this is what the Revenue have confirmed, that it is only one claim per 3 weeks. So you can't do a claim more than once every 3 weeks. If Once we get to the end of the furlough periods, whether that's 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, however long the revenue extend it to, hopefully not too long. And once your business is back and running and you're back to running your business and building up again, if you actually find that those people that you had furloughed are no longer required in your business, you are permitted to then make them redundant. So it would be at that point that you would then basically make that person redundant. So you are allowed to furlough a person and then eventually make them redundant. When you receive the income from the revenue, so the businesses that receive the income from the revenue to pay for the salaries for these furloughed people, this is actually income in the company books. So it is income, it is taxable. Now obviously the expense against that will be the cost of the salary that you're paying. But it is income and it is treated as income in calculating the profits. So we have a calculation and we've been explained how the calculation works. So for those full-time and part-time employees, look at your actual gross pay on the 28th of February 2020. We do not include bonuses, we do not include commission, we do not include allowances or anything like that. We just look at your gross basic pay on the 28th of February 2020.
What about variable paid employees?
We'll come to that bit next.
Okay.
So those on fixed salary and part-time employees, those ones you look at your February pay and we calculate our 80% on those ones. For those on hourly rates or 0-hour contracts or anything like that, you are effectively an employee and therefore assuming you're on their payroll, and therefore you would be able to do it based on 2 calculations. So the way the calculation is, if you have been with your employer for more than a year, let's say, and in March 2020, you're going to be furloughed, we would look at your pay and what your gross pay was in March 2019. So let's assume that gross pay in March 2019 was £1,000. We have that as our starting point. And then we take what's been our salary to date since April 2019. So if we go from April 2019 to February 2020, what's our salary calculation there? Again, we don't look into bonuses and commission because they are different, and we look at our average salary there. So we take all 11 months, we divide it by 11. If that figure is £900, let's say, we compare that to the 1,000 we got last year, and our £1,000 figure is the one that we will be claiming the furlough on this year. It's the higher of the two. If that average from April 19 to February 2020 is, let's say, £1,200, then naturally we will be then taking that £1,200 and we'll be working on that. So we take the higher of the two figures rather than taking anything different. So yeah, so that's how the variable and the full-time pay are calculated for furloughing employees.
Okay.
Have we had any other questions?
Yeah, we've had a load of questions, so I'll work my way through them. So there is no compensation for reduced turnover stroke profitability due to COVID-19. I'm assuming, Paul, you mean for a limited company? The answer is no.
So no, for a limited company at the moment there is nothing. Obviously for a sole trader, yes, you have got the self-employment, or if you're a partnership, you've got the rules for the partnership there.
Okay, and Karen asked about the grant. She was asking about whether it was taxable, and we said yes, it's added to your income, but that's the self-employment grant. I'm not sure if she was asking about the 10,000 grant for business premises. We're not sure on that one.
We're not sure, but they haven't actually classified that yet. Now that money will be coming directly from your council. Your local council will be supplying that money directly themselves. So yeah.
Okay, and then Chris has asked a question. He's in an employed position actually, so we're going away from self-employment. He's employed and he's already given notice to his employer to leave, and he leaves on the 6th of April, and he's then going to start a new job on the 7th of April. So this is all future, but he now can't start that job until this whole situation is over. So who's going to furlough him? His current employer or the future employer?
The future employer is not allowed to furlough you, because as we said, in order to be furloughed, you have to be on that employee's payroll on the 28th of February 2020. So your best advice, Chris, is to go back to your current employer, who you're still there now, I think you're leaving at the end of this month, go back to them and ask them to keep you on your payroll, and then that way they can furlough you. It doesn't cost them anything in order to furlough you, remember that, because by furloughing somebody, the government is paying 80%, so they don't have to top up that extra 20% if they don't want to. So they're not actually having to incur an additional cost by keeping you on. The employer's NIC is being funded by the government. The workplace pension is also being funded by the government. So there is no requirement or no obligation for them to keep you on. So there's no cost to them, shall we say. So the best thing for them would be, if I was you, go back to them, explain the situation and ask them to keep you on their books as a furloughed employee. Sign an agreement with them that you're happy to be a furloughed employee until you leave, and then at the end of that, then you're entitled to leave and hand in your notice as and when. But if you do leave before and go to your new employer, unfortunately you will not be helped in any way at all, and will have to go on, the only funding you'll be able to receive is through universal credits. So you're better off going back to your employer.
Okay, a question from Alison. She pays rates on business premises. Her rateable value is 24,000 a year, albeit she only pays 12,000 a year rates. Now that's above the small business rates relief amount, so you won't get the 10,000 grant, Alison. However, the qualifying limit for the 100% rebate next year is 51,000, is it?
Yes.
51,000. So you won't pay any rates next year at all. So that was announced in the budget.
Yeah, and so anybody, obviously the revenue have issued lots of council tax and business rates things already, so you've just got to wait for those to come through, and they will all be reassessed and calculated again with the grant.
Karen's come up with a question. Her husband is self-employed 3 days a week and he's employed on PAYE 2 days a week. He's being furloughed for his employment. She understands he can only claim 80% of his self-employment income if that makes up more than half of his overall income. That's correct?
That's correct, yes. So if your self-employment income is more than half of your overall income, you would calculate your self-employment figure, and then you'll be able to claim 80% of that. The difference, obviously, as I said, but I'll reiterate, the difference between a furloughed person and a self-employed person, even though the 80% figures are exactly the same, the difference is that under a self-employment person, they can continue to work. So a self-employed person is allowed to continue to work even though they might be receiving the £2,500 or whatever that 80% comes to.
Yeah, she then also, sorry, I've lost it now. So she's also gone on to say, does his overall income have to include dividends? Well, if you're self-employed, Karen, you won't have dividends. If you're having dividends, then you're a director of a limited company. So maybe that's the PAYE part, but dividends are excluded anyway.
Yeah, but if you are, when you look at your total income figure for your self-employment figure has to be 50% or more of the total income on your tax return that you are declaring, and that total income will include dividend income, salary income, pension income, rental income, self-employment income, and bank interest.
And then Karen,
so, yes.
Karen also went on to say that Martin Lewis on the TV mentioned last night that self-employed people can claim the 80% and still work. Is this correct? Yes.
Yes, so the revenue have confirmed that you are allowed to continue to work as a self-employed person. However, please remember that the money that you are receiving by the government, you are going to be paying tax on. So if you are going to continue to work and you're going to be receiving the money from the government, you will be paying tax on the whole amount. So some of that amount of money, you've just got to be careful if you are going to be doing numbers and you are going to be claiming, that you just don't want to be pushing yourself into 40% tax bands.
Yeah. Question from Lucy. Advice for those who are currently employed, resign from their job last month and cannot get a job given the current economic issues, so they're going to be unemployed effectively. Well, they could go back to their, as we said, go back to your employer that you've given notice to and see if they'll keep them on and potentially furlough them. That won't cost them anything, and then they can leave at the end of the furloughing rules. That's one possibility. Otherwise, they're going to be going, I guess, to income support or universal credit, something like that.
But obviously, as we've said, you have to be on that payroll on the 28th of February. So, Lucy, you mentioned there that you left last month. Obviously, last month is February. So it depends on what day last month. So if you left on the 28th of February, then you would have been on their payroll on the 28th of February. But if you left on the 15th of February, you wouldn't have been on their payroll on the 28th of February. So you have to have been on their payroll on the 28th of February.
Okay, we did answer this much earlier in the video, but it's come up again. So for Nick's question about limited companies with only one employee, and that's the director, as I pay myself from the company, do I have to lay myself off and make myself a furlough employee and claim the 80% of the wage, not including the dividend? Essentially, that's correct, but it's, if you're the only person in the company, it's quite hard. We've discussed how hard it is for a director to be furloughed because they're not allowed to work.
Yeah, exactly. So the best thing there is, I mean, there is a petition going around on Facebook. We have to sign it, and let's hope that we can get as many people signing it as possible.
Well, I think the link is on Facebook. It's to change.org. There's an official petition to help out directors who are owners of their own company.
Yeah, so definitely get one there. Obviously, for all clients of Champ Consultants, anything that does involve you, then we are able to assist. We're currently drafting a letter for those that want to furlough their employees. We are currently talking about a letter that will then hopefully be able to use for your employees. Now, obviously, your first port of call is to go to the employment contract, and if there is something in their employment contract about furloughing them or laying them off, then you're covered under that thing. But naturally, the best thing is that you would need to have a document signed, and we're currently in the process of drawing up a letter for our own clients for them to be able to use with their employees if they need to. And then, so for those employees that need to register under furlough, we're assisting them, and also those through the self-assessment scheme for the self-employment, what's it called again? Self-employment income support scheme. Then we're assisting those as well.
Okay,
you can email us.
Luke's come up with a question slightly off topic. Can you defer corporation tax? This is due on the 1st of May. The answer is yes to that one.
Yeah, so in actual fact, the Revenue have realised that the phone number that they did give out was an 0300 number is actually not being able to be manned enough because they've been inundated with phone calls. So they have actually now released another helpline. It's called the Coronavirus Helpline Number, and it's for businesses and self-employed people who want to claim a time to pay. So this will be for your corporation tax, your PAYE, your VAT, or anything else. And the phone number we have already announced on our social media channels, but just in case, the number is 0800, so 0800 024 1222, and they are open Monday to Friday, 8 AM to 4 PM. Now, obviously, as an individual, as a business, if you're VAT registered, then obviously you have got a deferment, automatic deferment on your VAT payment. I do believe that the coronavirus helpline number, they are very, very helpful, and I've heard very great things that they are really being beneficial to people in supplying them with time to pay streams.
Okay. Sorry, a question from Lauren. Lauren, you're a little bit confused in your question. I'm not sure we can answer it. She said, how do you get help if you aren't due a tax return until next year but have been self-employed over a year for a company? Not quite sure what you mean there, Lauren. Maybe you want to reword that question for us. You're either self-employed or you work for a company.
So yeah, so if maybe you started, say, self-employment in, say, last summer, June, July, or maybe April 2019, then it's really difficult for you to actually prove your income. And the Revenue have actually said, unfortunately, those people, they can't actually assist, which is basically why in their announcement yesterday they said that they would only be able to help 95% of the self-employed people, Obviously they have a very, very small minority who are top levels, and therefore those ones are out of the equation.
Essentially anyone who started self-employment after the 6th of April 19, or anyone who earns 50,000 or more per year, you're not covered by this scheme.
Yeah. Have we got any more questions?
I think we're coming to the end of them. There's a question on rates again. Essentially your rateable value, if it's under 15,000, you're on small business rates relief, you'll get a 10,000 grant. If you're larger and in certain sectors, you'll get the 25,000 grant. But it's only certain sectors, isn't it? What sectors are they? Is it leisure, possibly some retail? There's certain strict rules, so you have to check with your accountant whether you're entitled to the 25,000 grant or not.
But they are being distributed, and you are being contacted directly by your local council.
Yeah,
so that is something that's completely different.
Will confirm what you're entitled to. Dennis has asked a question: do Champ Consultants provide a service to figure out what's the most advantageous combination of schemes? Yeah, so basically yes. Okay, we can help you with all of these.
Yeah, I think there's a couple more comments.
You've got a couple more.
What if we don't have the cash flow to pay our staff in the first place to get it refunded? That is actually a really, really good question, because it's come up so many times. Basically, the revenue have said that regarding the furloughing, they're probably not going to actually issue any money out until potentially the end of April. So what they are saying is, what you should do in that case is go to your bank and get a business interruption loan. So you'll be able to go to the bank, apply for a business interruption loan, which is interest free for 12 months. And then as soon as your furlough money comes back in again, then hopefully you should be able to then repay off the loan or use that money for other purposes. Okay. So that is basically the best option for you, is to go to the banks and get a business interruption loan.
Some of the questions coming up again now are repeats of questions we answered earlier, so you can watch the video again on Facebook after we finish this video, and we also put the videos on our YouTube channel, so just look for Champ Consultants on YouTube. But the questions are the grants for self-employed people. If you do qualify, yes, they are taxable. No, you don't have to pay them back, is the main message.
Last question, I think this is, if not already asked, the help for self-employed is taxable. What taxes will apply and when will that tax will be due? So yeah, for self-employed people, the money that you are going to be receiving is taxable income. You will be paying tax on it. It is treated as income, so you have the tax, you have national insurance contributions on it, and it is treated as normal income. The March payment that you receive, that you do not receive but are entitled to receive in March, will have to go on your 2020 tax return, and you will have to pay the tax on that. And then anything you receive, are entitled to receive after April, then you will get on your 2021 tax return. The March payment does have to go on your 2020 tax return, even though you might not receive it till after the year end. You know for a fact that you are going to be receiving it, so therefore you would then put it on your tax return. You might want to wait to do your tax return until after you've actually physically received the money, which is naturally after, well, around June time probably. So you would just pay the tax on that, and the tax on, remember, your 2020 tax return is, you don't have to make your July payment on account. The money is payable in 2021.
Okay. Just for Mick, he asked a question about he's been paying himself back through his company, but repayment of a loan, that's obviously not covered. It's only your PAYE amounts that are covered by the furloughing. So if you're a director that's been taking money out of the company via repayment of a loan, that is a repayment of a loan. It's got nothing to do with income. It's not taxable. And therefore the government won't cover that. So what else? Luke has asked, is he able to keep his company open and not trade to furlough himself as a director?
Yes, you can, but by law you have to have a director in your company. So if you are the sole director of the company, you need to appoint another director in your place, which may be a bit of a hassle if you've got to agree with the banks and everything else. So you've just got to bear that in mind. but you cannot have a company without a director in there. So you can be an unpaid director, naturally, but you will have to prove to the revenue that you have done absolutely nothing at all in the year in order to be able to keep that going.
Okay. Someone else asked, David asked, he was made redundant at the beginning of February, and he's been on CIS self-employment since then, so about 5 to 6 weeks. Is he entitled to anything?
I'm sorry, David, but the answer to that is going to be no. You were made redundant at the beginning of February, so therefore you were not on the employer's payroll in 28th of February.
And then Leah's asked a question, I think this is more for an employment solicitor, but it's asking people about to start a new job and they've signed a contract with a new employer. Does the employer have to honour that?
Well, I mean,
they probably could, but they could immediately furlough you.
But they can't furlough you because you're not on their payroll.
You weren't on the payroll in February, so there'll be no money coming back anyway. So I would check with an employment lawyer on that one.
Maybe speak to your new employer
Okay.
on that one.
Okay, so I think that's it for today.
Yeah, I think that's it. It was quite a big session, probably nearly an hour long. Hopefully everybody found that really informative. We are trying to do these sessions on a daily basis, so if you've got any questions you want to ask or you want us to cover any topics for next week, please do email or message us in. You can message us via Champ Consultants on our Facebook page, or you can message us via any of our other social media sites. We are back again on Monday at 2 o'clock.
We'll do it every weekday at 2 o'clock.
I don't know whether, obviously, we're going to get a lot more information out of the government over the next few weeks, but obviously you've just got to make sure that you do stay home, self-isolate, and it's really, really important to do that. Yeah, so perhaps maybe you can give us some ideas. So if we haven't got information from the government regarding self-employment or anything else that they're doing over this time, and you want us to cover any other sort of business related topics, or I'm happy to, we can always have discussions about how we can suddenly start growing our businesses in this time. So please don't give up, because naturally this is not going to last forever. It might feel like it sometimes, I can assure you, but it's not going to last forever. And what we have to be prepared for is, at the end of it, we all need to be ready for growing our businesses again. So maybe now's the time to actually start working on our social media sites, working on our social media, or anything else really that we want to look at.
And hopefully you enjoyed this session today. If you did, it'd be great if you could share this with any other self-employed people that you know, and let them have a look too, and maybe they can send some questions to us for next week.
Yes, and as Matthew said, this will be downloaded onto our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Which is, if you go onto YouTube and just type in Champ Consultants, you'll be able to see this video. And obviously our first video was on Wednesday the 25th. So we've only got 3 videos so far, but we have...
Yeah, this is the third in the series, and we'll do them all next week.
Yeah, so I think that's it for today. Have a good weekend. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe. And please look after yourselves.
Stay at home, and thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.